Welcome, Bitcoiners. Welcome, welcome. We had children leaving to their Easter camp this morning, which is why I come to you currently 4 minutes after 8 a.m. Eastern Time, or Atlantic Time if you live in a place that didn't have any time change, like here, where I am. Let me see when the comments. Looks like we got our gang coming in here. You know, I get a speaker count, um, attendee count here, but it only ever comes from YouTube. You never know how many you get from on the software that I use to stream everything called Restream. Good morning, McTimmy. Good morning, P-Man Van. Last day in Mexico. Bitcoin is still running. Well, you avoided. It looks P-Man Van. Originally, I was supposed to head back to Montreal airport. I don't call it by its other name, or I try not to call it by its other name. It means nothing to me, the other name that people call it. And I was supposed to go back originally on Tuesday, and it turns out that yesterday in Montreal was a total war zone. I don't know if anyone saw it on the news. They had an ice storm. I've been through ice storms in Montreal before. They're unreal. Trees falling, branches falling. I don't know how many cars I saw smashed. I'd be stuck there if I had to go back. And I learned my lesson from last year. I went back in April after Bitcoin 2022, which was in April. Last year, Bitcoin 2022 in Miami in April. This year, Bitcoin 2023 in May in Miami, May 18th to 20th. Not exactly the same deal as last year. This one will come after the F1 event. So that's one of the reasons why it's then. It's good to have all that activity and energy in a city when you're hosting these events. P-Man Van, I'll be heading back to the farm. It's a bit of a runaround. Yeah, the park in front of your house is trashed. Yeah, I lived in front of Girard Park in NDG, the year of the 98 ice storm. Now, the park sort of survived. They had a bunch of beautiful old trees in that park. It's a gorgeous park. And the park mostly survived. I walked through it the morning of. I escaped for the ice storm to the eastern townships where they did not get any freezing rain. It fell as rain in that year. But the park survived. The park ended up getting screwed because it had I remember that one. Yeah, there ended up being in a few years later in Girard Park in NDG. There ended up being a like, you know how we get these little tornadoes every now and again. They're not really tornadoes. That's why I say these little tornadoes. They're similar. They tumble top over. Something about them's a little different. I've seen a few of them in my life, and I had a job once cleaning one up as it tore through some forest in the townships. But that managed to land in Girard Park a few years ago, and that's the one that destroyed all the big old trees, and that was kind of a bummer. But no good. No internet because of there was an icy rain currently at Tim's. Just wanted to say hi. Where do I sats? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Where do I sats? I'm supposed to be in that. I postponed everything a little while ago for a number of reasons. Mostly because the original question was, when am I going to be back on the farm? So that's what it was. I was supposed to go back now, go to the farm for a little bit. I ended up worrying that there'd be some issues and I wouldn't get much done. I got to go travel at the end of the month anyway. So what I'm doing is I am flying, 1 million customers without electricity in Quebec this morning. Yeah, it's pretty bad. They should have buried those lines. They don't know why they haven't buried them. How many times are they going to take to learn? So I was supposed to go back, but what ended up happening was I've got to go to Texas at the end of this month anyway. So I didn't want to come back to the farm and then move my kids down to Montreal or Toronto while I'll go away. There's a whole bunch of moving parts here. It's my, anyway, blah, blah, blah. So I just put it all into one trip. So I'm going to come back and then come back to Montreal. My family is going to go with my family, my in-laws, and my children and wife will stay together in Toronto. And then I'll fly from Toronto to Texas. So we, instead of one, go home, go on a trip, go back home, I'm just staying here, going to Texas on the one trip, and then going home. So we'll be back in May. We're also staying in Montreal though for a lot of this time because I'm building a new house on the farm. The old farmhouse is, it's fine, but it's like camping. I'm not going to build a. It's just a nice, small, simple, square, glass, enjoy the view building, which will be perfect for Vermont. Daniel says we dodged it here in central Vermont. That's usually the case. The weather systems in Vermont and the townships are not never, usually not identical to those in Montreal. So every time there's an ice storm in one or the other, you don't get it in when you're living a Montreal, Vermont lifestyle like me. They're usually separated when it comes to bad weather. Just a little bit, just a little bit. All right. Well, you're not here to hear about the weather, right? No one gives a shit about the weather, right? We don't care about the weather. We want to hear about all the fake news. Hold on. I forgot my notes. I'll be right back. There we go. Let me get the fake news notes that I have here. The fake news notes today start with our favorite actor. He's so great. He was in Harold and Kumar. Remember Harold and Kumar? I guess he was Kumar, not Harold. There's a lot of fake Bitcoin graffiti. There must be a lot of fake stuff. Yeah, it's hard to tell. You know how I've said very regularly, and that's the whole point of these Moscow time sessions. I don't have to add a punchline. The fake news is the news. So it can get pretty funny. No joke. Yeah, we're going to get right into that. I think RFK is even in my, he's in the headline. I'm trying to use the Twitter algorithm now that we know what's in it. If you put trending things into your tweet, it gives you a little boost. Right? So I looked for a trending word to put in there today. All right, let me get my notes up today. Oh, those are not my notes. All right, this is great. So our friend Kumar, his name is Kal Penn, if you didn't know who he really was, right? Kumar is really named Kal Penn. And he did a super fake news video recently on Bitcoin. It was all these moralist things. It was like, oh, it uses too much energy. Bitcoin can just switch. They can just change the code, yo. And they should just do like Ethereum and other popular cryptocurrencies that have changed their mining algorithm in order to be less energy intensive. They just did proof of stake. No big deal. It's all the same. So Kal Penn did that video, right? That was his last video. He's trying to do these, like, you get screens all around you and then you're giving some wise lecture, and he's just a fountain of wisdom according to this frame. His new one is amazing. So he came out with another one. The Bitcoin one wasn't the only one that he came up with. Here's the new one. So first of all, he starts talking about food, right, and farming. So he starts with farming, and he says, whoa, farming, I don't know if you guys know, but farming is one of the worst things in the world for emissions, right? And it produces lots of emissions. And now he says the burps of cows. He left out the farts. I don't know why he left out the farts. The farts, I think, are more famous than the burps. That's just me. When I think of what's famous for emissions, it's the farts. He didn't say the farts. I don't know why he missed a chance. I thought he was a comedian or something. Fart is just naturally funny, right? Wow, burps, okay. Famously burps, he said, right? And he said, this is his exact quote. I'm just going to give you the exact quote. All at the individual level, right? Because he's very interested in individualism here, I guess. And the individual level, one of the most impactful choices we can make is to eat less meat. And he says, guys, here he goes. You can substitute meat with plant-based meat. Plant-based meat, right? Thanks, Cal. He did it, right? So he goes into what it's made of and all this stuff. It's one of the most rock bottom stupid videos you're ever going to see. Here's another one. This is from the Telegraph. We got some scientists from China, some expert scientists from China, and people are still wondering where this COVID thing came from, right? So it was the bats, and then they said, no, it's not the bats, it's actually the raccoon dogs, right? Raccoon dogs. So here's raccoon dogs. But now the new study says, no, 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 no. Raccoon dogs didn't do it, right? According to these scientists, and they put this in the Telegraph, it's humans who went to the COVID Wuhan market. So it wasn't humans that went to the lab, because it's not from the lab, according to this science. It's not from the lab, right? It was the humans who already had it, and they went to the market. There might have been bats for sale to eat. There might have been raccoon dogs for sale to eat, right? But it was the humans that went there. So this is a new theory, right? It's brand new. Chinese researchers have dismissed a study which suggested there was a strong evidence the virus was transmitted to humans at the site. No, no, no. Humans spread it. Right? Humans spread it. And that's what they say. So there you go. Now, yesterday I forgot. It was in my notes, and I just missed it. Sometimes I change the order. It's one of the big things that I miss about having a printer that works and having printed notes, because sometimes just before the show, just before we all get together, I have the printed notes. And if I want to change the order, it's just a simple question of moving them in the order. But when they're pictures, which is what I do now, screenshots, and then I order the pictures in an album. And so I can just swipe through. If I change it, it's a little hard because I can't change the order in the album. It doesn't have that freedom in whatever Apple uses for its system to have shared albums. So I can't do that. So sometimes when I switch the order, I realized just before we went live yesterday that I wanted a slightly different order. And sometimes when I do that, some things can get missed because I'm flipping between. Today is good. Today I have the right order. But I did have the NPR story. I don't know if you guys have seen this. So NPR on Twitter was given the title or the byline of state-affiliated media, which I think is just amazing, right? I think this should catch on. I think CBC in Canada should be called state-affiliated media. I think all of these things should be called state-affiliated media. I believe that for a long time. And so it's a great app for organizing. Yeah, I do use Notion. It's the printing. My problem is the printing. I create these sort of in the 20 minutes before we all get together in the morning. So I don't have a ton of time. And I do like the printing was easy because I would just send all of the images to the printer and then it would print them and then I have the order. Anyway, this is all boring. The point is the NPR story I meant to cover. So I like to be the first person to tell you when something so stupid and fake happens in the world. And I missed it yesterday. That's all I'm saying. I missed it, right? Other people, it went viral. Everyone was laughing about it. Everyone having a good time with NPR and what Elon did. But I do have, I do want to cover it a little bit. And one of the most amazing things has happened since then. The actual, so John Lansing, I guess he's somebody at NPR and communications. Who knows who he is? Who cares who he is? He released a statement and emailed it to all of the employees at NPR. Here's what it is. From John Lansing's statement on Twitter label, all. We were disturbed to see last night that Twitter has labeled NPR as state-affiliated media, a description that, per Twitter's own guidelines, does not apply to NPR. NPR and our member stations are supported by millions of listeners who depend on us for independent, fact-based journalism we provide. NPR stands for freedom of speech and holding the powerful accountable. I can't even read it without laughing. It is unacceptable for Twitter to label us this way. A vigorous, vibrant, free press is essential to the health of our democracy. And this was reiterated by several others. We had Karen Jean-Pierre, the spokesperson for the White House, come out and say that it was, what was her quote? Anyway, she jumped and defended it. I don't have the exact quote here. But I do have the New York Times statement, right? So Twitter on Tuesday added a label to NPR's account designating the broadcaster U.S. state-affiliated media. Other news media Twitter accounts with the label include RT, which Max Kaiser worked for years, of Russia, and Xinhua of China. NPR denounced the move as unacceptable. And this is a funny note from Jeffrey Miller. So he says, only state-affiliated media like NPR would tell another media flat platform like Twitter that what is unacceptable and expect to be taken seriously. And Glenn Greenwald jumps in. He goes, totally. The best way for a news outlet like NPR to show they're not beholden to the US government and are unbiased is to have the White House press secretary rise to her feet in defense of NPR and heap praise on their great reporting. Truly independent outlets anger the state. They often end up where Biden DOJ has put Assange, not showered with praise by White House press secretary. When is the last time NPR did reporting that angered Biden, White House, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, etc.? NPR does this for the CIA, and he has a link to in a rare public speech about the CIA director and an NPR story that totally massages the CIA and the director and everything that's going on. Here's a self-proclaimed disinformation expert affiliated with the Department of Defense program also leaping to NPR's defense. Scratch a self-proclaimed disinformation expert and one finds U.S. government ties. Note how many state functionaries are vehemently defending the National Public Radio. So there you go. And here we go with, oh God, I didn't even know about NPR before, but checked them for a minute. It's so horrible. It's unreal. They've done a few good things in their history. Like I do like their, I always loved the Ken Burns series when he came out with them. I thought he was great. But in general, they've been rock bottom trash for a long time. Rock bottom trash. So there you go. Now, one of the interesting things when it comes to these two, and that's why I kept the board from yesterday. These two solitudes we often hear about, right? One of the neat things that's going on and sad things that's going on in America is that although you do get NPCs from both sides, right? People who are caught up in the opposites and the antagonism of right and left and the current fight, whatever you're fighting about today, that's the program, that's the talking points, those are the talking points, that's the angle you're going to take. Oh, my side is angry about this, so am I. Oh, my side is angry about that, so am I, right? So that's one thing we talk about a lot here, one thing we try to protect people from, right? We don't want to be on script for what you get angry. We don't want to jack anyone's dopamine for no reason, right? So we take a look at what people are jacked about, angry about, and try and break them down a bit so that we're somewhat defended against these incursions and these psychological operations. But one of the things that happens is information actually doesn't pass between the two solitudes in a sense, right? So you know what they're talking about on the left if you're from the right, but you don't know what they're saying internally, right? You only get a sense of what they're saying to right-wing people and vice versa, right? Left-wing people hardly ever know what right-wing people are talking about amongst themselves. Only when things cross over in the fight nature do we get any sense, and then it's just from the talking points that have been projected onto you by these centralized media outlets. So you end up getting information that really never traverses. Like, the whole hoax around Charlottesville, right? The Donald Trump said very fine people, right? We know it's fake. Like it's the most debunked hoax in the history of the world, right? There's Wikipedia pages that debunk it. You get even major media outlets like the Wall Street Journal that talk about it in terms of being untrue, and that Trump actually did denounce the white supremacists and the Nazis and whoever else they asked him to denounce. There was just a gap in the way he said it. And what they did was they did an Aaron Rupar edit, right? That's what Aaron Rupar does in the media. He just edits video so that it looks really bad, right? So Aaron Rupar, who has never broken a story, just edits videos, looks for clips, edits them, makes them look bad. Rupar did the drinking bleach hoax too, right? The drinking bleach hoax where Trump said to drink bleach, but obviously he never did, right? That never happened, right? Trump never told anyone to ever drink bleach. Trump only said that you can inject disinfectants into your lungs, which was a real thing he heard about. That is an actual thing. Light is a disinfectant, and it's a type of bleach, right? When they talk about bleaching flour and they talk about bleaching things, they don't mean pouring Javex bleach into it, right? That's not what they talk about. You put things in the sun, they turn white, right? I've bleached any type of plastic you leave outside gets bleached by the sun, right? So Trump was talking about that, and then, of course, they did the edit. They made it sound like he was talking about drinking bleach. And that's how you know, by the way, that the doctors around Trump, like Fauci, is a liar, because Fauci knew. He knew. There's no way he didn't know that this light injection system was an actual, it didn't materialize as a therapeutic help for COVID, but it's a real idea, right? It was a real thing that people were experimenting with and thinking about. Oh, I almost forgot. Guys. We didn't even do it. I didn't mention that the sun was up and that Bitcoin was running, and I didn't even take a sip of my coffee. We got to do that. We can't keep going without doing that. There we go. Back on track. We're back on track. So when Trump said the fine people thing, right, it's been debunked everywhere. And Fauci is a liar because he went along with that, laughing with other people. Oh, when Trump said drink bleach, that's how you know that he is a partisan person involved in self-preservation and not in your health and making a pandemic go away, right? That's not what happened. He wasn't involved in that. So the major problem we have is this two solitudes thing, right? Information doesn't traverse. Like everybody who can stomach Trump and listen to what he says and doesn't think he's the reincarnation of Hitler knows he never said fine people, right? He never said that. He never said drink bleach. He never said very fine people, referring to Nazis. He specifically by name said, no, they are not the fine people to whom I am referring, right? They are not them. He specifically cut them out. So there's people out there that just don't know that. I mean, really don't know that. There are some who are evil and definitely know and keep up with the pretensions because it's such a damaging hoax to Trump. It's one of the most damaging hoax. Those two together, the drinking bleach and the Charlottesville thing, were the foundation upon which most other hoaxes were built. Only Russiagate, Russia collusion is bigger than those ones, I would think, right? Only Russiagate is bigger. Only the Hillary Clinton sponsored research into the candidate using the Steele dossier is bigger than the other two as far as their effect and all that. But there are people out there who don't know any of this, right? None of it, right? And if you listen to the folks even on the left today, they don't know about Fauci's involvement with the creation of gain of function or the gain of function creation of COVID. They don't know his involvement. Now, we don't have an accurate 100% view on everything Fauci did, but there's enough there to look into it, right? And there's people who just think he's a nice guy. And so the problem here is that you get stuck in your solitude, right? You get stuck in your solitude. These are the two solitudes of American politics. And we've seen many times data visualizations show things like this, where when information is shared, for example, in a network, right, a social network, for example, we saw a lot of data visualizations around the 2016 election, around the 2020 election. And each and every time you'd see stories go viral within a bubble, viral within the blue bubble, viral within the red bubble, but stuck within the bubble. Things never actually pierce through. That's one of the amazing things about community notes that Elon Musk has propelled forward. This two solitude thing allowed for trolling to become a major metric of virality, right? The crazier and more extreme you took something, the more likes, the more shares, the more retweets, the more virality it got, and then the more amplification it got on Twitter. Community Notes does the thing where it actually looks for whenever that is broken, this two solitudes, the blue and the red, it looks for aggregate cross bubble acceptance of an idea, and that's what bumps it up to be community notes, which is what is so hilarious about all kinds of folks getting fact checked these days. You get NPR getting fact checked. You got all kinds of people the past few days about the Trump arrests getting fact checked. There was someone out there who went, "Oh, they're publishing pictures of the judge's daughter. This is intimidation." Or the Trump family is publishing pictures of the daughter of the judge, right? Well, that's not actually what happened. They were publishing pictures. They were mentioning that the judge's daughter worked on the Kamala Biden campaign, that he's in the bag, that he's a judge in New York who is politically motivated, whose daughter is involved at the highest levels in executive branch, or was involved in the highest levels of the presidential election, right? I don't know if she did anything with the executive after they were elected, but she was involved with them when they were candidates. And no one sent a picture, right? They just mentioned it. So the frame that it was, and this was from a mainstream journalist. I forget who, maybe the New York Times, maybe one of the other fake ones. That doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter. Community Notes fact check them. No, this never happened, right? People shared the political affiliation of the daughter and had questions, but no one was out there saying, here's the judge's daughter, which is the way the guy did it, the way the journalist suggested. So Community Notes, right? It's already been a massive success as far as I can tell. It's a totally different way. And really, that's all we ever needed to be able to navigate all of this dopamine charged news, was just to see the counterpoint. If you get the counterpoint first in an incendiary comment, you're a lot better off. Not the funniest comment to back it up, the more trolly comment to back it up, which is what the old Twitter was, right? It was the trolliest thing that was associated with the statement, either trolly in antagonism or trolly in promoting it. But nevertheless, it was the thing that lit your brain on fire that became the counterpoint. Whether or not it was a counterpoint to the actual point being made didn't matter, right? It didn't matter. So, so this two solitudes thing is a major problem, and anything that breaks it, and I've said, I don't think we're anywhere near getting out of World War III like we are today if it wasn't for Community Notes and the ability to fact check in real time some of the fake news out there, right? We would be way further back. We would be subjected to more confusion and fog of war, just like we were during COVID, and would be probably incapable of navigating the complexities of what's going on today to the extent that we are. Now, here's what's going on with how these bubbles are about to burst even more. And that's a good thing, right? These bubbles are terrible. They cause a lot of trouble. They keep people apart. They keep us fighting in our pre-programmed oppositional, contradictory, trying to think of the right way to describe it, but it's what keeps us barking at each other, right? Because we don't actually hear it. I've thought for a long time, one of the best ways to engage with people and persuade is to be capable of repeating exactly their point in a way that they agree with and respect. Once you can do that, you can actually start delivering counter information in a helpful way, right? That is one effective way to persuade. Being able to reiterate a person's argument, which means you've listened and you understood it, right? That's a major factor in persuasion and in moving people forward, because we can actually make progress. You know, for example, I bring up how stupid people sound, people who doubt global warming included, right? Anyone who gets into a global warming debate, anybody who gets in a global warming debate is going to sound like an idiot, because it's just talking points being hammered back and forth. No one's really listening to the other person. That's why I give that strategy of listening and agreeing with the two first points, right, of global warming. The 3 questions of global warming we've talked about here. It helps a great deal to persuade and have a civilized conversation if you agree with the first 2, right? Science is corrupted. When you get into that world, it's tough, right? But when you start saying, well, what are the predictions? What's going forward? You can actually get somewhere with people. So that's why I say it. It's one of those ways to break over the solitudes and the extremes that people find them at. But this is what's so interesting about RFK Jr.'s candidacy. It's like Community Notes. It's a way to get information on the inside of the bubble to start ricocheting around and becoming relevant. So here's what we already see with RFK, right? So RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy's son. If you need to know the family history, you've got JFK, right? JFK became president in 1960, and he hired his brother to be the attorney general, which was a great choice. He was an amazing attorney general, as far as I can gather. And he had all kinds of crazy stuff that he was up to, and they both had enemies in the Federal Reserve and the CIA, and a lot of it is the dramatized version of what's going on. But turns out, they killed JFK, then they killed the guy who killed JFK within an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it was. And then they killed the guy who killed the guy who killed JFK, right, supposedly. And then a few years later, when Bobby, went into kind of hiding, he was the attorney general under LBJ, but then went on his own to run as president in the 1968 election. And he was killed too. right? So he was killed too. And now his son might be running for president, and or is running for the Democrat primary, so is running for president. And here's what all the news described him as. Here's the headlines from major media outlets that are in that Democrat bubble. This is how they describe him. This is from The Hill in DC. Anti-vaxxer RFK Jr. files to run for president as Democrat. This is from Yahoo News. Anti-vaccine activist RFK Jr. challenging Biden in 2024. Here's another one. Anti-vaxxer Robert K. Jr. files paperwork. Everywhere you go, CNN, anti-vaxxer. Everyone calling him an anti-vaxxer. Now, think about this for a second. If anyone out there could confront the conspiracy theory label with credibility, right? Whether it's anti-vax, whether it's CIA, whether it's any of this stuff, it's RFK Jr. Like I said, his father, his uncle, the guy who killed his uncle, the guy who killed the guy who killed his uncle. And you're supposed to sit there, and he's got questions, I imagine, right? I bet he's got a couple questions about why all these guys were shot in the head. And as we've discussed many times here, the whole concept of conspiracy theory, the words themselves only become popular after JFK's assassination. They do not exist as a combination of words in the New York Times. If you check the archives, if you check any of that stuff, no one ever uses the title to describe someone as a conspiracy theorist. Now they're all calling him a conspiracy theorist. RFK is being called a conspiracy theorist. Well, he might have some legitimate questions, right? He might. He just might. And when it comes to this whole concept of anti-vaxxers, right? Here's what someone has described him as being and this is from, let me pull this up. This is from, just to show you how powerful what he has to say can be. This is him. This is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon. Now, do you guys know who Steve Bannon is? Steve Bannon was one of the main architects of the original Trump administration. And I believed the minute Steve Bannon was canned by Trump, Trump sort of lost an important part of his administration. He gave in to the GOP side. He gave in to the uniparty side. I believed that when it happened. I said, this is not good for Trump at all, right? He's losing an important piece of what made Trump Trump. Trump is not all knowing and all seeing. He's got a million blind spots. He's got a lot of things he's just not aware of, right? Normal. Right? No one can know all of this stuff. And Steve Bannon was one of the intellectual drivers of that administration who really understood the battle lines probably better than Trump. Right? Probably. That's just my opinion. Probably better than Trump. So Steve Bannon has his own podcast now, or whatever it is. He's got his own show, The War Room, it's called. Very interesting guy. And here's what he says. RFK Jr. is the leader in the country of the movement to hold big pharma accountable. The leader. He says it twice, right? He says RFK Jr. is the leader in the country in the movement to hold big pharma accountable. The leader. And he just shared that today. And with the paperwork being filed, with him actually going forward, it means he's raised enough money. It means he's pushing these ideas forward. Now, here's the thing that's so interesting. Almost everything on the left, they're unaware of it. They just don't know. Democrats don't know about the Charlottesville hoax. They don't know about Fauci. They don't know about all the things going on in the world. What about the US dollar? Wait, what about the US dollar? They don't know. It never gets covered. If you go on MSNBC, they don't talk about it. They had one video on CNN where they talked about maybe America might lose its reserve currency status. It was Fareed. I can't remember his full name. But, he's one of the CNN guys who, despite having Trump derangement syndrome, was capable of changing his mind about things, which is always all I ask for from a journalist or a politician or almost anyone in the world for that matter, is to signal and show that you're capable of changing your mind, right? That's hardly anyone can do it. It sounds like an easy thing, but it's not easy. So RFK now coming out with all of his ideas about JFK, because this is all going to come to the surface. There's no way. There's going to be attention on him. there's not a lot of people running in the Democrat Party. You've got Marianne Williamson with the Stones and the mysticism, who I quite like, actually. I think she's a delightful person. She's already polling in the double digits. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the vacuum inside of Biden's head allows for other people who wouldn't normally be prominent. Marianne Williamson is not a serious presidential candidate. I mean, honestly, she's not. And she shouldn't be polling in the double digits. She's polling in the double digits because the other guy is so stupid and so weak mentally that there is this opportunity. And so there she is, polling in double digits. RFK will immediately rise to that level. I mean, he's immediately going to be in double digits because nature abhors a vacuum. And he's going to get a lot of attention for it. He's going to get more interviews. He's fixed his voice. But what's the other thing he's talking about these days, right? He's talking about the vaccines. He's talking about deep state corruption. He's talking about all of these things, right? He's aware of them all. But he's also talking about the money. He's also talking about what happened to U.S. position in the world because of the money. Not many people are doing that. No one on the Dem party is doing that. So suddenly you get a guy who can actually break these two solitudes, someone who can actually, like a bomb, go inside of a thing and explode information out, right? You remember the movie Armageddon, right? We've talked about that movie. I think I mentioned it in this context before. If you haven't seen it, asteroid is coming to Earth. It's going to hit Earth. Let's shoot nuclear bombs at it. No, what happens when you shoot a little firecracker at a rock? Nothing, right? So they visualize it in the movie like a firecracker comes at a rock. What happens, right? Nothing. Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler. I have a daughter named Liv, by the way, named after or inspired by the actress in that movie. Not Olivia, just straight 3-letter Liv. In the end, they take this Bruce Willis team that are oil drillers, right? They drill for oil and they shoot them into space and they drill inside of the thing. And the point is, when you put a firecracker in a rock, it blows up, right? So that's the whole point of the movie, right? That's all you need to know. It's the same with information. It's the same when it comes to these two solitudes with information. RFK entering the Dem party with all of that attention, and then immediately him getting labeled as anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist, means the opportunity now to blow people's minds is right before him. Now, again, if anyone can get away, like, you can't really say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist to RFK Jr. You can't. You can't. His whole family got killed. How can anyone call him that, right? It's almost impossible. Yeah, I don't want to miss a thing, Bitcoin Graffiti says. Yeah, I don't want to miss a thing. Yeah. So, yeah, and then we get understanding Bitcoin here. Never thought the Democrat Party would reject a Kennedy. I don't think they will. This is what I'm saying. You're going to get a lot of motivation to reject him. They're going to try these talking points, right? Anti-vaxxer. They might kill him, right? They killed his whole family. So maybe he just goes away, right? But I don't think you're going to be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube now. He's coming out and he's going to say these things. He was talking about the dollar. He was talking about U.S. reserve currency just yesterday, right? So now you've got this guy who can actually start getting people to talk over here, right? A guy who can do what Trump did, right? Remember, when people wonder why people like me love Trump, like, I love him. I love him. Now, I don't even necessarily want him to be president again, right? And I have a lot of criticism for a bunch of stuff that he did. And I don't really support him until he says he's going to pardon Assange, Snowden, Ross, all the people we want out of jail. And he does say now, I'm going to pardon all the January 6 people. Why didn't you do that a year ago? Why didn't you do that when you were leaving office, right? So I have plenty of criticism of Trump. Plenty, right? And they're all related to him being the next president. I'm still in the Vivek. I'd say I still like, if I cared about politics, I'd say I still like Vivek for the Republican nomination, despite all the stuff Trump's going through, and definitely think. But we can't forget right now. I don't have a problem with Trump and the Stormy Daniels money and this and that, right? Like, but even Trump at his speech when he was going on himself about the dollar and it being lost when he got back to Mar-a-Lago after being arrested in New York City. And you saw a guy, and I've heard it referred to as someone whose wife was really upset with him, right? Because he was low energy and he looked like someone having marital troubles, not tired, someone whose wife, and think about it. What do you think Melania thinks about having to deal with all of this Stormy Daniels shit again? right? Look, I 100% believe he's a martyr, but he also screwed up, right? He screwed up like Stormy Horseface Daniels and all the shit that came about because of that. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone's sex life or anything like that, right? I just think that, and I still believe it, that Trump is too expensive. He's too expensive. In 2016, not expensive. And this is what I mean about why we love him, right? Why people like me love him and might not even want him to be president again, right? We love him because of what he did to the Republican Party. He was the Armageddon bomb inside of the Republican Party in 2016. He did things that I didn't think were going to happen in a generation. And it happened at once. You know, as someone who worked for Stephen Harper in Canada, Stephen Harper was the if the GOP could have produced him, he would have been the greatest GOP of the old party president in the history of the world. He was everything you ever wanted. He was smart. He was Mitt Romney, but much better as far as being calculated, not smarmy, all those things, right? He was a very, and I don't know if you noticed, his son, Stephen Harper is a Bitcoiner, by the way, now. His son is a miner in Texas. It's great, you know. Sorry, in Alberta. Um, so, so the point is, Stephen Harper was the wet dream of these GOP establishment people, right? And then, so, you know, he wasn't exactly like them too. He had a bit of a libertarian streak in him, and that's what attracted people like me to what was going on. It was populism. It had small governments, ethics. It had some interesting pieces that attracted people to what he was doing. And of course, we loved how much he triggered the state-sponsored media in Canada. That was a party unto itself at the time. We loved it. It was going to be the greatest, right? Now, what ended up happening, what I saw anyway, is that this was someone who still believed or didn't understand how bad and how infected and how terrible the media was, and probably didn't really understand the part of the human mind that just wants narrative bias, just wants confirmation bias, didn't really understand that people hated him and he was never going to change their minds. And he still had this sort of belief that he could charm or at least be consistent in his conservative behavior, that it would appear so logical and so consistently logical that people would respect him and vote for him in the end, which was one of the stupidest things I ever heard in my entire life, right? When Stephen Harper got his majority government finally in 2011, people like me said, okay, let's rip stuff out of the ground, like the CBC, like all of this. Let's change the country. And he was, oh, let's go incrementally, let's slow it down. I said, how do you know you're going to be around for 4 more years? We got one chance. We have one chance to do this stuff. We got the majority. The Canadian people gave you the confidence to run an administration for 4 years, unfettered by crybaby left-wing people. And what did he do with it? He pissed it away and let the media tear him down with little stupid things, the Senate spending scandal at the time, all these dumb, low IQ things, which were manufactured outrages that ended his administration. He did nothing wrong. In the end, what he did wrong was he ostracized people and chose a path that didn't really sync with human behavior and was dumb. And he was never going to persuade people in the way he thought he could by being consistently logical and all of these things. It just was not going to work. And people like me understood that, what was going on. We said, this is not going anywhere, right? We're done. They're going to eat us for lunch now in this majority government. And they did. And so that's why people like me were already thinking about, well, we got to do something new, right? Well, this isn't going to work. This whole be really strong on talking points, don't give them an inch, be consistent, all of that was a failed strategy. I didn't know what to do. I just knew it wasn't that. I said, rip things out of the ground, change things while you can, and hope you live another day, and hope your base is motivated, and all of that stuff, because that's our only hope of really changing things. And this is when I start getting into Bitcoin, because I give up. I said, they're not going anywhere. The whole system is corrupted. I had realized that the solutions to politics wouldn't be found in politics because of Stephen Harper, because of him, right? Because of him. Now, if it's just a question of performance, if logic mattered, I would have come to a different conclusion, right? The country was rich, everything was happening in Canada's direction. Those were good times in Canada. A lot of people remember them fondly. I remember them fondly, but I knew that underneath it all, it was falling apart very, very quickly. And whatever came next, and I was predicting already then, Trudeau will be, people would laugh at me. I'd say he's going to be the prime minister. There's no way, there's no way we're going to beat him. And he was polling way down in the polls. He was, the Liberal Party was a no-name party by then. The previous leaders had turned it into the third party of Canada. It was nowhere. It wasn't even registering. And Trudeau was able to bring it up. How well he had the media, obviously, right? And he had all the lies about Harper. He had all that stuff in his favor. But what it made me realize about Trump was that because he was saying these things within the echo chamber of right-wing politics, when he had his kill shot on Jeb Bush, low energy Jeb Bush, right? That was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, that he was knocking out a political dynasty with just being forthright and funny and all the other things he can be, right? Trump is one of the greatest stand-up comedians ever, ever. Like who would get into an insult battle live on stage with Trump? It's as dumb as getting into an insult battle with like one of the great rappers of all time or something. You're not going to win. Don't get into fights with comedians, right? Don't do that. Like when you see these people who heckle comedians and they just get devoured, don't do it. They're professionals at this stuff. And Trump is one of the great professionals at this stuff. And watching people try to match wits with him was hilarious. And it exposed them all. And it was exactly the same as putting a bomb inside of an asteroid and blowing it up. And so when I say people like me love Trump, we didn't even know what the solution was. The minute he opened his mouth with the Mexican rapist speech, I said, that's the answer. Irreverence is the answer, right? Being such a serious but unserious, being irreverence is the right word, right? Just being irreverent for everything that has ever happened and came before will change our reality, because he just refused to play by the rules. And that was a great thing, right? But it happened because he was inside the echo chamber and he blew it up from the inside. That's why at the time, Democrats didn't really understand what was happening, right? They laughed at Trump until he got the primary win because they thought it was all a big joke. Many people did. I knew it wasn't. I knew it was 100% serious. From the minute he started in 2015, I said he's going to win because he's reshaping the Republican Party in the way that people who have seen what's going on and the great, trends in politics think it has to be this way. So that's what I saw. RFK can provide the exact same thing on that side. He can provide the exact same effect of exposing people to things, like with Trump, right? We never heard anyone, remember what he did to John McCain, right? Remember it was, oh, he's a war hero. Oh, John McCain. Oh, he was a prisoner and he suffered for America and we're the good guys. And so he suffered for the good guys. And you remember what Trump said? A war hero? What do you mean? Yeah, well, in my world, where heroes are the guys who don't get caught. Come on. Heroes are the guys who don't get caught. No one had ever heard that. No one had ever even thought of it. I hadn't even thought of it that way. I was like, you're right. He's not really a hero. And I was not a McCain fan. I definitely was for Obama in 2008, with reservations, of course. But I like parties changing and all that stuff. And I was an Obama supporter in 2008, even as I was a conservative in Canada, because I just disliked the George Bush Republicans so much that we had to get them out, right? So it's a big thing. It's a big thing that this is going to happen now in the Democrat Party, and they're a little behind on it, but it's a necessary thing. And look at what is going to happen now, right? So you get a conversation, and I'm going to tie it to Bitcoin now for our last few minutes here. So these are the important factors, right? And this has a lot to do with narrative bias. It has a lot to do with speaking things out loud and subjects which can then turn into national conversations, right? So here's the thing. You get Kennedy in the candidacy now talking about the US dollar. I mean, just imagine him and Biden on stage live at the same time. I don't think Biden can handle it, right? I think they're going to have to now get rid of him. That's just my feeling. I don't think he can handle being in the ring with RFK, and nor can Kamala. So they got a problem on their hands. If they do get in the ring together, you're going to hear about de-dollarization. You're going to hear about the global reserve currency thing, stuff that would never have come up on the Democrat debate stage before. Bernie Sanders isn't capable of talking about that stuff, right? He's just not. Like, he's not going to talk about that. He's manufacturing and da-da-da, but he's not going to put it in a way that's coherent. And anyway, he's been screwed twice and went along with it. So he's not a credible person anymore, right? The world would be way different. I believed Bernie could have beaten Trump in 2016. I believe that, but he sold out. He went along with getting the election stolen from him from Hillary, and he went along with it getting stolen from him again in Biden's time. He should have won both primaries. Should have won both, right? He was the real guy. They did what they're probably going to do to Kennedy. The difference is Kennedy isn't going to be like a weak Bernie Sanders trying to get along and where's my mittens and all the other bullshit stuff that Bernie Sanders comes up with, right? He's not in it for that. He's not in it for that. He's in it to find out what happened to his parents, what happened to his uncle, what the hell happened to his family, and all the things they built that have been corrupted over time. Everything he did for the Democrat Party, everything the family did for the Democrat Party has now been stripped away by people like Biden. So it's a totally different scenario, right? You get someone who is extremely dangerous inside that bubble talking about things that can blow it right up. Now, he's going to be talking about the dollar. So remember that. The dollar conversation is going to happen within this solitude, right? What about over here? Trump said it in his Mar-a-Lago speech 2 nights ago. Last night on the news, Tucker Carlson, right? Here's what he said. And this is from Peter St. Onge, who a lot of people are following these days. He had 2 segments on the dollar and US reserve currency and how important it is and how no one is talking about it, right? Except us in our world of Bitcoin and stuff. So he says, a critical feature of a reserve currency is its apolitical nature, which Biden is now gutting. After both parties in Washington destroyed the dollar's stability with inflation, now the Biden administration has chosen to wield the dollar as a weapon. Together, the message to foreigners, they should get out while they still can. In response to Russia's war with Ukraine, the U.S. froze the dollar reserves of Russia's central bank. To be clear, these were not American assets, but were dollars owned by the Russian central bank and the Russian people. The seizure was intended to cause bank runs and collapse Russia's credit system. It didn't work. Instead, it exposed the Biden administration's willingness to violate the trillions of dollars foreigners rightfully own. The danger of this precedent is difficult to overestimate. Then you had Luke Gromen, right? Luke Gromen, who was on the show on Hunter right after that segment. And he says right here, if one tries to see the forest for the trees, it becomes apparent that a major portion of U.S. foreign policy since 2000 has been about trying to prevent free market capitalism from breaking out in global energy markets. So now talking about free market capitalism in global energy markets, which means you're actually talking about the petrodollar, right? Because indeed, that's what it's been. He said it perfectly, right? Why did America go into Iraq? Saddam was going to sell oil for euros. Why did America do the intervention in Libya? We talk about it all the time. Gaddafi was going to create a new settlement system for oil, right? And what do we now find ourselves doing, right? We get the climate change people who are trying to create policies that will ensure the US dollar, petrodollar hegemony. Like it will ensure it, right? The same people, Biden and all these guys who are running the war, are making oil producers super rich, super rich, super rich. They run the world now, right? If you're worried about the Russification of the planet, we're there. We are now living in a energy cartel world, and they're not getting along, right? They're not getting along, and they get countries to do what they want, right? Russia is one big energy empire. It looks like what we did in Ukraine is really about taking their business, supporting U.S. energy companies and Western energy companies, right? That's a big part of what's going on. So we don't have free market capitalism in that area, right? So you're getting discussions about the free market of energy. You're getting discussions about the US dollar in the Democrat side. You're getting it from Fox News. Here's an interesting one too. DeSantis, charging up his political campaign, realizes he can't attack Trump directly, right? And he shouldn't. Like I just said, right? You don't attack the funniest people in the world with insults because you're going to lose, right? So he's not even trying to attack Trump directly. What he is doing, and this is interesting, and he started today, this is in the Miami Herald. Total and complete disaster. DeSantis takes rhetorical aim at Fed Chairman Powell. The strategy DeSantis is going to use from here on out is not to attack Trump directly. It's going to be to attack Trump's hiring, attack Trump's decisions, who he put into roles. Fauci, very, very fleshy weakness of Trump, right? He was into the vaccines. He was into what was going on with Fauci. He could have fired Fauci a few times, I think. Some people say no, his hands were tied and he couldn't fire him, just like he couldn't fire Mueller, right? Because, oh, what are you doing? But he hired Powell. Powell reconfirmed by Biden. But if DeSantis, and this is what the Miami Herald says, Ron DeSantis has found a new rhetorical target as he prepares for a potential presidential bid. Fed Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And there are political pundits now who believe this is the strategy to go after Trump's decisions, attack the people by proxy, attack Trump's decision making, not Trump himself. Right? If you get into that fight, you're going to get caught up in one of the great meat grinders of all time, which is Trump and his just rapid fire insults. It's just not going to stop, right? He will just blow everything up, and it's not going to make it, right? Which we love him for. That's the fun stuff, right? We think that's hilarious. So from now on, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get the dollar criticized from. You're going to get the dollar criticized from the right. You're going to get the dollar criticized from the left. You're going to get the dollar criticized from foreign relations, right? When it comes to the energy wars. So suddenly, the one subject that isn't caught in this left and right that actually will break out of the mold and will be engaged on all kinds of levels is the US dollar. It might be the one thing that brings everyone together in their condemnation, right? And once that stuff happens, right? Once you start saying things out loud, once you start focusing on things, remember, money is a psychological engine. The facts don't really matter about the US dollar, the account balance, the debt, sovereign debt. I mean, it matters because it adds to the story. They're just parts of the story. But the story can take on a life of its own. And that's where we're headed. We're headed to a place where everyone is going to be talking about the problems with the US dollar from every angle. And it's going to be different than any other political fight because it's happening on both sides. And that is thanks to RFK running. And that brings in all these other subjects like JFK Jr., like JFK, like the CIA, like the deep state. We're going to see the media exposed for who they are. When they start trying these attacks on Kennedys, there's a segment of the Democrat population, like I had that statement up there, I never thought I would see the Democrats attack a Kennedy. There's a segment of them that will never. Like Kennedys are royalty and have a certain royal place in American consciousness. And whether fictitious or not, it doesn't matter. There are people who cannot be unbrainwashed from that. There are people who are so sympathetic to what that family has gone through that they will support them. They will support them. So you have a situation now where probably the only thing we can talk about, and I know Tucker says no one's talking about it, that's going to change. This is all we're going to be talking about shortly because it's the one thing that everyone is going to be able to talk about on both sides. On both sides, they're going to speak from a very similar point of view. Unlike, and it might happen with other things, right? But you can't do that right now with, like I said, global warming. It ends with people explaining science to each other. Vaccines, it's the same argument. It ends with, oh, peer-reviewed studies, you're stupid. You believe in science. You believe the experts. What do you believe in? I believe in science and the experts. What do you go on Twitter? Right? It's just that stupid argument again and again and again and again and again and again. That might change now. It might actually change, which would be great, right? Which would be great. So we've got a chance to break the mold on conspiracy theory as a subject. We've got the chance to break the mold on how we talk about the dollar, how we talk about U.S. role in the world, right? Everything's about to change. And the way I see it, the more we talk about the dollar in that way, the higher the chances are we manifest that reality. Really. Right? When, I've seen this with marriages before, right? The minute you get a married couple that starts talking about their problems, or a dating couple, right? They complain one group complains to their guy friends, and one group complains to their girlfriends, and then you say things out loud, right? Well, maybe we should think about this and that, divorce or separation or whatever. The minute you start saying those ideas out loud, they start taking on a life of their own, and they start perpetuating. I've seen it. I've seen couples, who I thought were fine, and then they bring it up once, and they bring it up twice, and then they start talking about it, and it gets normalized, and then suddenly they have now, in the same way that we talk about how hard it is to break up, right? Because you have this vision of a future, you've built it together in your imagination, and when it comes down, when it's not there, that's the hard part, right? You've got to replace this thing that was real in your mind. This thing you were working towards is gone, right? That's where a lot of the emptiness comes from when people break up. And but talking about it can make it happen, right? If you don't talk about it, that's one way to stop it, right? And we haven't been able to talk about these things that are unhealthy relationships, our relationship with money. It just hasn't been a casual enough conversation, right? By making something more common, you are more likely to make that thing happen. I've seen it in relationships before, and the same idea can spread to our relationship with money. And I think that's what's happening, right? I think we are now in a place where people are going to be talking about this stuff all the time. All the time. Can only help Bitcoin. All right, let's get to some of these comments. We love cackle cackle. She had a great one the other day. I saw it. Thought deep impact with Mr. Wood was better. Yeah, there was two. If people weren't alive back then, they don't remember. There were two movies that came out simultaneously about asteroids hitting Earth: Deep Impact and Armageddon. RFK can have a deep impact in the Tea Party. He's going to have a deep impact in the Tea Party. That's exactly right. I like that one. That's hilarious. Feelings don't care, but indeed, they do not. They do not. If he can get his message out without bringing tag, no, he will be tagged a conspiracy theorist no matter what. No matter what. That don't protect him from that. Embrace it. That will take the steam out of the word, is what I'm saying. Right? It doesn't. Of all the people in the world that have earned the right to have questions about the deep state, there's only one. It's him. Like, come on, it's him, right? You can't credibly call him a conspiracy theorist. He has real questions about what the heck happened to his whole family. Once the trust goes away, it's over. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's coming back. Joining late. Enjoy. Thanks, Lucky. All right, what is Bud? Imagine having your future wealth held in won. Comparing the dollar to won and trading settlements just weakens your opinion of both. Absolutely. That is the narrative bias. That's the narrative bias that is going to lead everyone to Bitcoin. Because once you open up the door, okay, maybe the US dollar is now political money and is best served for domestic needs in America when policymakers say, let's give food stamps. That's the future of the dollar, right? That's it right there. It's food stamps, right? It is the ultimate UBI and will be used as UBI. It's political money used for political purposes, and its reference will be the hard assets that governments keep and that other people keep, and that's what it will be judged against. And so by even starting down this road, inevitably you'll talk about Bitcoin, which is good, right? All right, team, that's all I got for today. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.